Hello, welcome. Today we're going to do a quick little doctrine test. I have done a full naval meta video, but I'm going to do a specific test just of doctrines because I've heard some people suggest that doctrines don't actually do anything. Like none of these bonuses actually apply, specifically the surface visibility bonuses. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just test out base strike versus no doctrine. Base strike does not really give any bonuses to the meta fleet. It doesn't give any heavy cruiser bonuses. All of the bonuses it gives are light cruiser or carrier based. Now the fleet we're going to be using is 4 carriers, 5 battleships, 20 heavy cruisers, and 120 destroyers. And these are very typical designs. I did not use designers, but these are typical 1940 designs. Lots of AA. I went for 3 turrets rather than 2. You could have gone for 2 and more AA. Very typical designs. And the first test we're just going to do is going to be the French fleet with base strike versus the Dutch fleet. And the Dutch have no naval doctrine selected whatsoever. And we're just going to see if base strike actually does anything relative to not having a doctrine. Alrighty, so they're searching for each other. Alrighty, so the French and the Dutch have engaged. Let's see how this goes. That started out as a surprisingly even fight. And this fight is largely going to come down to whose carriers operate the best, but we can clearly see that the doctrine is doing something. But it's not doing a lot. If we repeated this test using trade interdiction, it's going to be completely different. This is the test if we repeated it with no doctrine versus trade interdiction. And we'll see them lose a couple of destroyers, but by and large, they lose basically no capitals. 3 heavy cruisers. I think the worst I've seen doing this test is 4 heavy cruisers and maybe a battleship. Like that one battleship barely survived. But this test is never close. That might be down to org. These heavy cruisers only have 40. If we go to Germany, theirs are going to have 80, which just means they can continue operating for longer and better. So let's do the test again. This time we'll do trade interdiction versus base strike. We both know they win against no doctrine. But let's see how this goes, because we're at a significant org disadvantage here. We have better carriers, but we have worse heavy cruisers, and we don't even get the same bonuses that they get for battleships. So they have engaged, and the Germans did lose a heavy cruiser very quickly because of the carrier advantage. But otherwise, it's pretty clearly in favor of trade interdiction. Surprisingly, Fleet and Being managed to get all of their battleships out. Just barely. But they managed to get all of them out. The one thing you'll also notice is the bonus to naval air agility from carriers does seem to be working. Every single time the French fleet has not lost all of their carrier air wings. Every single time the fleet going up against base strike ends up with no air wings on their carriers. So that is nice to know because I actually expected this naval air agility from carriers to do nothing. Now the last test, trade interdiction versus Fleet and Being. So under these 2 doctrines, you get the same org bonuses to heavy cruisers. You get very similar org bonuses for battleships. You get the same capital ship armor bonus. The main thing here is you get naval AA 10% and capital ship attack 10%. Here's the thing, that does not apply to heavy cruisers. Heavy cruisers are not impacted by that bonus because they are considered screens for the purposes of bonuses. If I were to design a new ship here and give Atlantic Fleet Designer, and then I made a meaningless change to this heavy cruiser, and I saved it, it did not get the designer. If I changed to something that impacts screens, like this one, this will give us max range, subdetection, and max speed in exchange for cost. If I make the same change again, notice how the bonus now applies. So they are screens, so they don't actually get the benefit from the capital ship attack. Now in my previous testing, this result has always been a coin flip. But in my previous testing, I never brought along battleships. Or they engaged each other. The Germans actually lost 2 ships first. And this is the coin flip that occurs. So we do actually see trade interdiction win, but that's a very close result. There were times during that battle where Fleet and Being was actually ahead in capitals. The problem is they ran out of destroyers first, and because they ran out of destroyers, they started getting torpedoed. Let's do that again. For this test though, I am going to leave on weather, and hopefully we just won't get any rain. And let's just hope it doesn't rain. I did turn on weather, right? Yes. Oh, interesting little quirk. We started fighting so high up latitude-wise that it wasn't actually night at any point in time during the day. And this is the other result that can happen. Sometimes Fleet and Being wins barely, loses barely. Sometimes they just get destroyed. Trade interdiction with the same fleet can lose. I've seen it before even though I didn't show it here. But when it loses, trade interdiction doesn't lose nearly as badly as Fleet and Being. When Fleet and Being loses, it just gets wiped out. Trade interdiction is the best doctrine. Sometimes Fleet and Being. Sometimes Fleet and Being can outperform it, but it's just not as consistent. If you were doing a test of pure heavy cruisers versus pure heavy cruisers, the difference between the two is so minuscule that it doesn't actually matter. This result is actually just a coin flip. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.